Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this program is brought to you by the cinema Courtroom. Welcome to our Halloween special. This isn't going to be just any episode of the cinema Courtroom because, for one, it's coming out on a Monday, which means you're actually getting 3 podcast episodes in total this week. 2 regular ones and 1 unnumbered Halloween special. Now that's definitely something. The only difference between this Halloween special as opposed to all of the other ones is that there is going to be reckoning. There is going to be bloodshed indeed. And most of all, there is going to be judgment. Another thing, there's going to be no post-sentencing hearing in this special podcast episode. Instead, I will just simply be reviewing a horror movie. So really, if you think about it, I'm going to have a bit more of a break, which I think is very well needed for all of us. And this episode's going to be a lot more laid back, chill, and scary. Before I begin with our spooky film review, I need your help on something pretty urgent. Because the trick needs treating, the ghost of Frankenstein needs summoning, the dark spells need chanting, and above all, the bloodthirsty algorithm demon bids you to like and subscribe on whatever, and I mean whatever, streaming platform that you're listening to, whether it be Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, the Cinema Courtroom YouTube channel, or the depths of hell, because every click on the icon counts. Don't forget to ring the notification bell to cast out that algorithm demon from whence it came. Now, without further ado, let us begin with our review topic to commemorate this Halloween season. Smile. I just want to go on record and say that I didn't like Smile at all. It is as simple as that. For a horror movie, Smile does not stick the landing. They incorporated the oldest and most cliche jump scare trick in the book. The ending was pointless and amounted to very little, if anything at all, to the grand scheme of the story. The curses, which are passed from one recipient to another, weren't at all convincing, while somewhat intriguing on paper, but visually, it was alright, I guess. On the other hand, I am still going to give this movie points for at least trying to have a decent plot concept within. The plot premise for Smile is as follows. It stars Sosie Bacon as a therapist who, after witnessing the bizarre suicide of a patient, goes through increasingly disturbing and daunting experiences, leading her to believe what she's experiencing is supernatural. Now that we've established the blurb for Smile, what I'm going to do next for this review is rather simple. Rather than just bitch and moan about Smile, I want to discuss it in some depth so that you can see why I'm not particularly fond with this horror movie. Now, I'm going to explore 3 crucial elements of Smile right here on this podcast. And these elements are the following: special effects, twists and turns, and if Smile, even though I myself didn't like it, is able to still evoke a moviegoer's emotions to a certain extent. Because, listen, just because Smile did not work for me does not at all indicate that it's not going to work for you, unless you and I have similar tastes. But chances are you all have your different set of interests, as I have a wide variety of, listeners on the Cinema Courtroom show. So there's no way that we just are going to have a consensus of Smile being good or bad. I just had to give you this quick disclaimer before I talk about, the elements in this review. For one, the special effects for Smile, and that is something I have to give credit to this movie for. The special effects bring a sinister vibe when it comes down to Smile's imagery. There is a scene in Smile where there is this patient, Laura Weaver, who had witnessed her professor commit suicide, and tells our protagonist, Dr. Rose, that there is an evil and demonic entity pursuing her. And that's where the special effects become visible before the title reveal. Dun dun dun. It opens the first act. We get to see the patient's creepy smile. Now, of course, the bit where the patient cuts her own throat, that was CG. However, I still contend that there was little to no CGI being utilized in this horror flick. And that's because most of it is practical. And again, while I didn't particularly like Smile all that much, mainly because it wasn't even that scary for me to begin with, again, that's just me, it might resonate with you differently. And the ending of Smile didn't make enough sense, which I'll get to in just a moment. I think that this movie deserves some positive word of mouth for keeping it authentic with its special effects. Very often, we see most horror films incorporate a over excessive heavy load of CGI. And for some reason, when I watch those movies, I can notice the CGI almost instantly. Now, here is where that in itself turns me off. Noticing the computer-generated imagery in the quote-quote intimidating scenes for those horror movies can be off-putting at times, because the realism is getting sucked out of it, and I am again reminded that it's just a movie, minus the authentic horror. Because don't get me wrong, there is some authentic and horrific elements in Smile that shouldn't go unnoticed, but it wasn't enough to be like, ah! You know? And I'm glad Smile doesn't make this mistake of the gross overuse of CGI, because other horror movies might as well just tell you by the way that they're just incorporating that CGI in awkward moments. It's okay, mommy's here. Those computer-generated graphics are not gonna hurt you. You can sleep comfortably in your pillow tonight. It's all CGI. Look. Because, newsflash, none of these evil entities are real. They're not supposed to be. But what the movie is supposed to convey is a sense of realism to make it as if those evil entities are real. That's how you immerse the audience into a horror film. And this is different with other genres where sometimes when you're immersing the audience, it's a hit and miss. And that I can totally get. But a horror movie is meant to scare, and it's meant to make you scared for a good few hours after watching the movie. Or it's meant to be like, oh my god, I'm so glad this movie is over. But when I watched Smile, I was just like, well, I'm glad this movie is over because I wasn't really enjoying it. You know? And luckily, Smile was able to insert special effects in the scenes where it required them the most. And it did make the jump scares, however stupid that they may have been, somewhat more impactful and effective for the movie. Another element that I want to explore from the Smile film is the twists and turns. Now, this is where my criticism of the movie really starts. If you thought that I was bitching and moaning about this movie in the beginning of this review, wait until you hear me talk about the twists and turns right now. You know the scene where Rose is invited to a birthday party? She brings her nephew a gift, and then, as he opens the gift, there is a shot where you can see the disbelief and trauma in his face. I expected it to be something like more gory, a severed toe, a head, maybe even a disfigured testicle, something that one would be repulsed at, something that you wouldn't dare talk about, like outside of that movie. You know, it's something that's messed up, and that would leave you like as if there are bugs crawling in your feet, like ugh, like get it off me, you know. But it turns out, as the shot transitions to what was inside of the box, it's a dead cat. The same cat we saw earlier in the movie. So there goes the element of surprise. I would have actually been surprised at that twist if the cat wasn't shown frequently prior to that twist. Or maybe as like a passing comment, Rose can say, I have this cat. And then nothing much is said or referenced about that cat until the surprise scene where the gift gets opened. Once or twice would have been alright when it comes to featuring the cat, but you have to realize that it is imperative for a film like Smile to up its game when it comes to surprising the audience, especially because we've seen the creepy dead body in a box trope too many countless times in other horror movies. And right now, there is an open market for unique horror movies in the cinema industry that Smile would have done well to exploit with its twists and turns. But instead, I was just left unsatisfied. And I mean, sure, I was somewhat horrified because after all, Rose gave her nephew a dead cat as a birthday present. Oh, boo-hoo. But it wasn't enough for me to be shocked out of my breath. I want to talk about one more twist, which was uncalled for in my opinion, and as a result, it hindered the ending for this movie, and was, as a result, very half-baked and predictable. Rose visits her old house, where her mother committed suicide there. Rose confronts the evil entity while having her badass moment. Long story short, she finds closure, and in an attempt of symbolism, the writers make it so Rose burns down the house, which symbolizes her past trauma, and that she has finally found closure through burning that house, aka burning her past. The curse remained latched onto her in the end of the movie. Now, the twist this time is that she passes the curse to Joel, the cop love interest who we see throughout the movie. By the way, I think the chemistry between those two characters were alright, but it was generic Hollywood chemistry. And then the credits start to roll. Talk about anticlimactic. And they had to play the Lollipop song in the credits? I mean, come on. When you end a movie like that, it's obvious that you haven't completed your story, but you want to release the movie anyway. And that's not acceptable. The final thing that I want to talk about in regards to Smile is the emotions of the average moviegoer watching this horror movie for the very first time. Other than the jump scares, which again, this is my humble opinion, but I think incorporating too many jump scares is cheating on the filmmaker's part, because anyone can get startled by a jump scare if it is placed at a random time. If I walk up behind you in the dark and you were to turn, you'd go, "Ah!" Would you not? Instead of being scared for my life along with the protagonist, I was actually getting a kick out of the scenes where Dr. Rose is getting mentally tortured by the psychological demons. And I am pretty sure that makes me a sadist. But if Smile were to be engaging enough and had actually made an effort to embrace the horror genre, then perhaps I would have actually been shivering like a bird and on the edge of my seat. And I mean, here's what is fundamentally wrong with how Smile attempts to instill emotion to the general audience as well as horror fans alike. Why weren't there enough jump scares, especially if the producers of this movie solely relied on them to begin with? Like, fine, I get it. I don't like jump scares being used if that's all there is in the movie, but there weren't even enough of those. So there was no point in cheating. I came out of this movie, grabbed a bite to eat, and I didn't even think about it again until I started outlining this very podcast, which I'm recording right now for this Cinema Courtroom Halloween special. The Cinema Courtroom recommends Smile for the average moviegoer who is looking for a horror movie to watch for the very first time, and if the moviegoer is looking for a horror picture to, play checkers with. Whilst horror fans are likely to exit this movie with a reduced level of impact, dissatisfaction, and a laughably anticlimactic ending. We've reached the end of this Halloween special. Thank you for spending Spooky Month with us here at the Cinema Courtroom. It was an absolute pleasure to host you, as we've put out episodes every week, and we're going to continue to do so tomorrow and until the end of November. And this is going to be repeated for hopefully the rest of this year. because I enjoy putting out content, and I hope you guys enjoy listening to this content. And seeing that this is the end of October, go treat yourself to a proper horror movie, for as long as it's not Smile, because I'll be very disappointed if I find that you've thought of yourself as a horror connoisseur and then you wind up watching Smile. Just don't. Okay, that's the whole point of this review. Order lots of candy, but not too much, obviously, because listen, life is pocket-sized, and you never know when you're going to have it ended by a thief who's going to want to steal that candy in the middle of the night. Or you might get mutilated by a werewolf in the next full moon. Just kidding. Or am I? I guess you'll never know. I hope to see you guys again in tomorrow's not spooky installment of the Cinema Courtroom, assuming that you're going to survive this bloodthirsty evening, where we're going to talk about yet again another movie. As for what movie it's going to be, find out when the next episode of the Cinema Courtroom show launches tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow on YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Anchor, and the Amazon Music platform. Thank you once again for listening till the end. I am your galactic judge, Mark, and I hope you have a spectacular and spooky evening.